Director of Professional Learning and Certification at Axel. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event. This is how we do it, a panel on Black world languaging, powered by ACTFL. On behalf of ACTFL, we would like to extend our most sincere gratitude to our gracious and incredible host, Dr. Tasha Austin, as well as our amazing panelists, who you will meet in just a second. Additionally, we would like to thank you for being here, for being present, and for being open to the message. Dr. Tasha Austin is the incoming Assistant Professor of Teacher Education, Languages Education, and Multilingualism for the University at Buffalo Graduate School of Education. She is the outgoing Teacher Education Special Interest Group Representative for New Jersey TESOL, New Jersey Bilingual Education, and co-created and hosts their Critical Conversations YouTube series. Her research uses critical race theory and Black feminist epistemologies through a racial linguistic perspective to qualitatively examine language, identity, and power, and the ways in which anti-Blackness emerges in language education and language teacher preparation. Without further ado, take it away, Dr. Tasha Austin.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me or see me in the screen just yet, but I am so grateful to be here with you all. Thank you for excusing my recovering from COVID. I know my voice kind of has a raspy, I'm going to call it my raspy radio voice for y'all. But thank you just for showing up tonight. Firstly, thank you to my ancestors living or on the other side for endowing me with the purpose and the passion to do this work. Thank you to ACTFL, Dr. Samora, Michael, for the open invitation to envision this event alongside you all. The framing we're entering this discussion with is that of critical joy, which Vargas and Austin describe as the acknowledgement and reflection of challenges and grief faced and overcome in the pursuit of becoming a language professional. This panel will be resisting the hokey hope tantamount to gradualism and bootstraps kinds of grit that Andrade warns us can turn Black and racially minoritized students away from the deep and transformational learning we endeavor towards in language education. So we hope you walk away tonight appreciating how, when we face and celebrate the truth of our overcoming as we engage in world languaging as Black people, we cultivate and spread a critical joy to our students, peers, and to the field in general. I also want to invite everyone to continue this conversation after the panel is over using the hashtag This Is How We Do It, and don't forget to tag ACTFL. So at this point, I want for each of our incredible panelists to introduce themselves. I know you saw the ongoing screens showing just a bit about who they are, but I'm going to ask for each of them to speak to that on their own terms. And let's start with Veronique.
Hello, good evening, bonsoir, in Lingala, which is a language spoken in my native country of Congo, Mbotenabino. I am so honored to be here tonight and just overjoyed, like Tasha said. It's such a great honor to be here. I am a French teacher. I've been teaching in high school. I'm going to start my 9th year. And I guess we'll take it. I will pass it on to Kia maybe. And I will talk about me later on more in details.
Hey, everybody. First off, very, very gracious, very thankful to be here with everyone here, as well as all the amazing panelists. My name is Kia London. I am a Spanish teacher in the Chicago area. I have been teaching for 16 years, and I will just leave that there because we have more time to talk about all the other stuff.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jerry Parker. I'm a faculty member at Southeastern Louisiana University, and I also serve as an adjunct assistant professor at the Morris Brown College. And again, I have a little detailed and a lot of a more detailed story to tell a little bit later.
Can everyone hear me? All right. Hola, y'all. Buenas noches. My name is Ebony Thornton. I am a high school teacher outside of Atlanta, the greater Atlanta area, in Gwinnett County Public Schools. I am starting my 20th year of teaching this year, my 7th year teaching high school at Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia. Go Rams. And I'm excited to be here and ready to get started.
So they are so gracious and so modest. You're going to hear all about these amazing professionals just in a moment. Before I transition right into the first question, because I'm so excited to just partake the way the rest of you are. I am learning in this space like you. I do just want to shed a little bit of light about how I encountered them. And I think that's important because we often don't know that we're here, right? We tend to show up as like the unicorn in our setting. But I was able to find these amazing educators through social media, and they all showed up in different ways for me. Every time I saw Veronique tweeting, it was in support of someone else. It was celebrating somebody's work. It was uplifting them. It was encouraging them. And it was sharing some amazing, like authentic content for those who are teachers of French. Every time I saw Kia's feed, I was looking at these incredible resources that she creates or co-creates with another Black Spanish teacher. And the ability, when I was in the classroom, I wasn't doing anything else, okay? Didn't have any time. So looking at the fact that she's able to generate that while being an amazing teacher inspired me. I came across Ebony just by looking at her show up as her full self, which again, and we'll get into this, have not always been able to do as a language teacher in K-12 spaces. And I continue to really be inspired by holding that mirror up to myself and saying, can you be your full self the way Ebony does? And Jerry, the most amazing thing happened when Dr. Zamora was saying, come on, Tasha, you gonna do something for ACTFL? And I was like, can I graduate yet? But she was like, we'll get it together. And Jerry partook in one of the ACTFL critical conversations and immediately rather reflected, we had a critical conversation and no Black world language teachers. And I said, that's it. We got to go. It's go time. So I wanted to share those tidbits with you just to let you know that as modest as they are, these are incredible Black world language educators before you tonight. So I'm ready to get into the first question. I just wanted to share that because I'm so honored to be here among you all. And the first question is about, we often hear about the scant presence of Black world language teachers. And, I'm thinking about the bits that I was able to learn about you just yesterday, about your diverse geographic locations, the citizenship statuses, the different experiences with language learning or the languages that you were using at home before you even entered the field. And so thinking about that diversity, would you share with us your path towards linguistic expertise in the language that you're teaching? And specifically, what stands out to you as a driving factor in your advanced pursuit towards this profession?
If I'm honest with myself, when I started looking back, I started taking Spanish in 10th grade. And I had it in high school. I loved my Spanish teacher. But now that I look back, I can see times in my life, because I'm not a heritage speaker. I'm a U.S. descendant of slavery, African American. And so, but I would watch Carousel on the Spanish channel when I was a little girl. There was just something about, and it was a show about a teacher, strangely enough, but I would watch that, or I would watch the Spanish, I was just drawn to it. But I had an amazing teacher in high school. And I just fell in love with it. They made the language come alive for me. They made it something I loved and something I enjoyed. And it just never dawned on me until I got into the profession that I couldn't be a Spanish teacher just because I was not of the heritage. Now, my Spanish 1 teacher was a heritage speaker. She was first generation Mexican American. The teacher I had for Spanish 2 and 3 was not. So I started thinking, well, if Senora Harding, who was German American, could teach Spanish and teach it well and make her students love it, then I could too. So it was taking it in high school and just immersing myself with it and falling in love with it. And that is how I started this journey.
I'll follow up with that. My journey is similar to Ebony's in the fact that I started in school. In Louisiana, for a long, long time, we as students in K 12 had to take French. And so throughout my K through 12 years, specifically K through 5, I took French 30 minutes for a couple days a week. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a foreign language teacher, let alone any foreign language teacher. And he was from Africa. And we didn't really get into the groove of it. It was just something we just thought was a normal part of our culture. But here in Louisiana, I mean, we say things like a chafalaya, chafunkta, Mardi Gras, jambalaya. These are all common words to us. It's integrated into our culture. And then when I got to middle school, I stopped taking foreign languages. It was when I got to high school and I took Spanish that I kind of saw that there's something different in this language world. I didn't really like it at the time, but I knew it was something different. It was when I took French my junior year of high school, and I just fell in love with the language. I absolutely loved it. Then my senior year at Zachary High School, we had to do a what they call Windows to the World project. It was a experiential learning project. So I had to job shadow someone. I had the privilege to job shadow a Black foreign language department head at a local HBCU. So I was able to, and she was also doing French and Spanish as well, which is what I was taking courses in both. And it was from there watching this woman speak these languages so fluently and teach these classes. And she wasn't teaching regular 101 introductory courses. She was teaching phonetics. She was teaching literature. She was doing study abroad. She was leading and moving the field forward. And that was the first time I ever saw that. And then I went on to get my degrees in foreign languages, and that's what brought me back to the classroom. And now I'm here, in this space, steadily trying to replicate my story onto other people.
Well, I am a native French speaker. So I'm a native French speaker. And at the beginning, for me, it was me wanting to be involved in education because of the education of my children who are born here. So I'm the first time immigrant. So my kids are born here in the US, and I live in Miami because I forgot to mention it. So it was, for me, the process of me learning English at first, and also the process of learning Lingala, which is the African language from Congo that my grandmother spoke when I first met her when I was 10 years old. I was fascinated by the fact that we can communicate with a person and starting to understand so much more if we only spoke the same language. And then later on, moving to the US, learning English, and realizing how much the culture that you belong to had such an impact on yourself. I kind of felt like I wanted to share my French culture, my French African culture mostly, and becoming involved in education. So I went back to school, got a degree, but in elementary education. But I always wanted to I felt like I quite was not great as being an elementary school teacher. And I wanted to teach the kids French instead of just doing all the languages. So I was like, and my kids, my own kids kept saying, Mom, I don't know how you're going to teach those kids how to speak English when you have such an accent. They're going to go home and not pronounce everything in English the correct way. So I was like, well, maybe you're right. So I started taking more French classes because I needed to. And when I got my first job offer, was actually to teach French in the high school. And I took it from then. And I just loved it. The experience, mostly for me, was the experience of sharing my cultures with my student that really pushed me further to want to just being immersed in it. And from then, having actually going back to school again and obtaining my master's degree in teaching foreign languages.
I know for me, I kind of have similar experiences as Dr. Jerry and Ebony. But I will say my parents really foremost. My mother, when she was an undergrad, she was studying to become like a translator for like the government at the time, because that was something her father wanted. She was studying Spanish. And then my dad, who is of Cuban descent, they really started speaking to me a little bit at home, although English is my first language. And then that's really where it started. Middle school, I had a very influential teacher. Her name was Mrs. Goler. We'll never forget her. And then I continued on to high school. And I know high school was interesting for me because I had worked my way all the way up to Spanish AP, and I noticed that I was really the only Black woman in my Spanish AP class. And so for me, I started getting just a little bit more like self conscious of just like, well, I don't know if I can speak right because everybody else around me sounds different. And what if I say something wrong? And so I know at that point, I decided to take a break after that first semester. And it wasn't until undergrad, when I attended the University of Iowa and I took the language placement exam, and they're just like, well, you tested out of language, you could take it or you don't have to. So I decided to go ahead and take it. And I'll never forget, I took a course. It was actually on the African diaspora, believe it or not, you all. And the professor, her name was Dr. Cricklow, if hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I'll never forget, we were studying the African diaspora, and she started talking about the history of just our Afro descendants as far as the transatlantic slave trade goes, in terms of how, our ancestors were all, dispersed and transported into different places in the Americas. And it wasn't until then where I was like, whoa, like, okay, so that means that this language is like in my bloodline. And that was really an eye opener for me. And then from there, I started studying abroad. I was able to study in Cuba at one point in time, and that was probably the clincher for me. Just being able to make that connection. And I didn't study in Havana. I was in Matanzas with all of the Afro-Cubanos. And so that was amazing. And there was like a sense of connection and a sense of completion where it was just like, oh, okay. So this is okay. This is something that I can be okay with and that I can continue to grow and learn in. And ever since that, it has, I try to remember those pieces, and bring those pieces into the classroom, as far as what's going on today now.
I'm just like basking in how different you all are, and yet the overlap between what drew you to push and pursue and advance and excel in languages. Some themes I heard were cultural connection, either because, okay, this person didn't grow up speaking Spanish either, I can do this, or because, my goodness, I have this representative from the HBCU, or I want to stay connected to my elders and be able to raise my children in their culture, or the parents saying to you, you're going to continue with this, right? But then you drawing on things in your own experiences that you were even within your development that made you say, now I'm ready. Now this is something that is meaningful to me. I'm just so inspired to hear that, and know that there's so many folks who have these different draws to get into languages in this way. And now they can look to you and say, okay, I can see this through to the other side. So thank you for sharing that, and for sharing a bit about how you came to this place. I just have a small follow-up before question 2. And my small follow-up really is just to ask you a bit about, with the inspiration that you drew and the way that you were able to excel, is there anything that helped you to continue at a point when maybe things got tough? And that could be in your classroom-based language learning pursuits, or it could be, more generally speaking, if there's something that comes to mind that maybe pulled you through a time that was more challenging.
I mean, I'll go first. I always think of my parents. Being a little Black guy in Southern Louisiana, the first thing you hear when you say, I want to be a foreign language teacher is not, oh, good job, bravo, I'm proud of you. My parents had that mentality. They were like, go for it, do it. I always had emotional support, financial support, and mental support from my parents to pursue this career. They believed in me from my first foreign language course to my first degree to my second degree to my doctorate. They always believed in me being a foreign language teacher. They always believed in my dream of being a foreign language teacher. And it was just that it takes a village to raise a child mentality. My friends, my distant relatives, my first cousin, second cousin, third cousins, all of those people always believed in that dream of foreign language education. You know, even when I should have been a football player, I should have been a doctor, a lawyer, any kind of other thing. Everybody, when they heard I wanted that, they believed in me and they pushed me.
Same with me, Jerry. And it's funny because my mom grew up in rural Alabama, but she took French in school and she really liked it. And I can't help, and you know, she went on to have a professional job. She worked at a university and, you know, did some accounting for a while. But I can't help but wonder if somebody had said to her, you know, Kenny, you have a knack for this French. Have you ever thought about teaching it? Would she have done it as well? But for me, it is family, it is friends, it is former students also who have said, I still think about a lesson we did in class, or I heard this song at a restaurant the other day, and I thought about this activity that we did, or I can talk to, you know, I have a former student, right? Well, I'll share that for the next one, but it's just that it is a cloud. It's the cloud of witnesses. It is my family, it is my friends, and me too. So, you know, I just had to remind myself that I was worth it and I didn't get this far to be left or to be forsaken. So that was what it was for me.
I would say for me, definitely family and friends and, you know, and just being able to seize the opportunities that I had as an immigrant. When I was in school in France, I did go to university there, but I didn't realize later on the reason why I wasn't supported in what I wanted to do. I understood later that it most likely has something to do with who I was. And when I came here and in the US and finding out that I had all the opportunities of being who I wanted to be, and it was, of course, up to me, but also I had the privilege to be able to do it. Financially it was difficult because I had to keep working and have kids and go to school. It took me quite a while because it's not very easy to become a teacher. The path, sometimes financial path, are difficult. And I worked, as a matter of fact, as a legal secretary for 15 years while I was going to school and attend to, you know, to get all my degrees. But once I finally had that first job, going into a classroom and seeing that I could represent, that I was in a space and I was been in the same space in an independent school. So you can imagine I was the only Black teacher, French. So, and people questioning sometimes, well, how come you're French? Are you born there? Are you French? I mean, people, and it kind of made me think, well, I'm representing a lot of things that people are not accustomed to. And I think that drove me because I really, really wanted to be an example and for my student to see French is not only Paris and it's not only people that it's not only croissant and Tour Eiffel. There's a bunch of Africa, you know, like half of the African countries and more, 54 countries in Africa speak French, and that, you know, where can it take you? So I then became really motivated by showing another side, by sharing my African heritage. And that became really a huge drive for me up to today.
So I'm honestly, y'all, I will say education literally fell into my lap. And I say this to say, even with all of those experiences that I had when I was in undergrad, I did graduate with a degree in Spanish, but at one point I was trying to carry on the dream that my mom had eventually had of becoming like a translator or interpreter for like the government. And it did not work out that way, which is totally fine. So with that being said, like for me, it was a call. It was just a call where I ended up going back to school to get my degree in education. And it was one of those, you never know how much, I don't even know how, if I'm going to say this right, but it was something that I didn't know. I don't even want to say need, but it was almost like those nice pair of like house slippers that you put on and it just fits. And I had no idea that it was literally going to turn into this. So I will honestly say just with that, and then also, of course, like my family, and then even now, just like within the network of world language educators that we have now, and especially the Black world language educators that we have now. And I feel like for so long, so early on in my teaching career, I felt like I was the only one. And where's everybody at? And so that, I will say, with all of that together, that is what has been, keeping me here.
Y'all are amazing. Ooh, I'm like trying to take it in and stay focused on moderating because I just want to keep talking and share these experiences. Thank you for sharing about the villages that supported you to pull you through, about really just knowing your self-worth. I can do this, I'm worth it. And about the fact that it took like sustaining a whole other job at some point just to get the degrees and the certifications. And frankly, just kismet, right? Kia, like having a time when you're like, oh, this is right for me. I appreciate that. And with that, I do want to roll into the next question that kind of continues to explore these various contexts that you're talking about that put you in this position. So because of those different contexts and languages and roles, I'm thinking about how a lot of you were like, I'm going to tell this story later. It's probably time for that story. Would you share with us a description of your teaching context and how long you've been teaching generally and in your position? And then share with us just a bit about what those successes and challenges look like in your role. I know yesterday, very quickly, we were talking about, you look like this, but you speak like that, right? What does a world language teacher look like? And like, how do we determine how we show up in our body in these spaces, right? And how do we language our existence when we are in these spaces, right? So if you all could share some successes and challenges that you face currently as a Black world language educator.
Well, I can take it, I guess. So I have been teaching. I'm going to start my 9th year. I'm in high school. I'm teaching French in high school. I am in an independent school. So I teach intermediate level, higher to intermediate. So I teach AP. And going back to what Kia said, I rarely, seldomly, in the 9th year that I have been teaching, had a Black student in my class, which for me is a struggle. But I will touch on that afterwards, talking about the challenges. And I also teach IB. I started teaching 3 years ago, the International Baccalaureate. I do the beginning level and the higher level, French B, of course, which is for language learners. The contest, so I teach in a very privileged area in a private school. So my population are mostly, my students come into my classes. This is like the third language, so they're very privileged and bring culture for them. Being in touch with the world is something that they do all the time. It's not a challenge for them. So that's pretty much the context that I teach in, and they are learners of Spanish. Speakers of Spanish. This first language most of the time is Spanish, and of course they speak English, sometimes Portuguese, and also French. And then what I will say as a success for me is when I really love the AP and IB curriculum because it's really directed to the out world, to the international world. So that gives me an outlet, a huge platform and an outlet to bring in the African countries and kind of make sure that my curriculum has a great representation of African country and my African culture in a positive manner, which when I first started out teaching, it didn't happen in the books that I will have. They either had never had a picture of a Black person in the books, never mentioned an African country, or mentioned that because of colonization, so many countries in Africa speak French, and that's their first language. So of course I'm a representative because my student will ask me, but how come? And I will share my personal story, and then they could relate. So for me, that's a huge success for me, to be able to open them to a world and to people that they normally would have never heard of, or they will see depicted in a certain manner on television, because it's always the stereotype, it's always the starving African children, it's always things that they never see. So when I come into the classroom and I'm able, for example, to show them pictures, I can tell them, make sure that you make the difference. This is a village, and we do have villages in the United States. We have people starving in the United States, and this is a village in a particular place. And then this is the city, and this is what the city look like. So that way you don't have that stereotypical pictures and thinking the way media normally shows you, or the way they want to show you that you have to go, for example, in an African country and make sure that you feed everybody because everybody's starving. So that has pretty much been my success, because I have students that come back and they say, oh, madam, I loved it because I was able to speak with a person from Ivory Coast, a person from Senegal. I had a student one time went on vacation to Rwanda and say, how come we didn't talk more about this country, madam? Because they all speak French there. And I had a wonderful experience, and I was able to speak to them. So those have been my success. And when my kids know, when they leave madam's classroom, they better know that Africa is a continent. That's one of the things, because then they will say, oh, I know you did. And they look at each other if they knew and came to my class and make that mistake. And then the challenge is mostly, what Kia said, to make sure that, how do we make sure that Black and brown students arrive to those high levels so they can go on to become Dr. Jerry, Ebony, Kia, and in those classes where actually they can become teacher, because otherwise the path is really much harder. And we show with their experiences that they started it early. So how do we expose many to ensure that there is a line to take over? And that has been, for me, something that I would love to work on, and I've been trying to push mostly in my little corner in my school, to have more students that look like me in my classroom.
So I've been teaching 20 years. I did middle school for 12, and I am now in my 7th year of high school. And one of the things that I loved about middle school is, this is kind of how I look at it. I think middle school Spanish is kind of like your trailer. It gives you a teaser and a preview, and then your secondary classes, that's the movie. So what I loved about teaching middle school Spanish was, okay, I don't know if the movie may not be the best, but I'm going to make sure that trailer is going to be 5 stars. So I made my class when I taught in middle school as fun and engaging as I possibly could. So I did food, I did piñatas, I did all of those different things. And when I started teaching in 2004, it was difficult for me to find a variety of resources, because just like Veronique is going to say with French, a lot of times in Spanish, it's Spain and it's Mexico, or it's llamas, or it's sombreros. And yeah, that's part of it, but there's so much more to it than that. So it was hard for me to kind of have to pull in all of these other different things. And now that I'm teaching high school, Grayson High School is the school I teach at, my county is a very diverse county. It's a majority minority county, one of the few in the United States. 50% of the students in my high school are African American. So I will have more Black and brown students in my classes than a lot of my contemporaries in other school systems. And so it's just getting them interested and giving them that passion and finding ways to make them like it. And one success for me is that I was the teacher of the year finalist. I didn't win it, but I was a finalist for teacher of the year the last school year in my school system. And we have one of our current students or former students talk about the impact we had. And I'm going to try to make this as fast as I can. The young lady that spoke for me said that she took Spanish 4 because she had me in 1. She had never had this is an African-American young woman, graduated in the top 10 of the class of 22 that just graduated this past May. Had it in elementary school, didn't really like it, but had never had a Black teacher, and one that she liked, one that wore her hair natural because she was in middle school. And so she was still trying to straighten it. And she saw me with my curly hair, and she liked that I had my curly hair. And that I made her love it so much that she ended up taking it. We do spoken language competitions. I took her in 9th grade. She won the Little Superior Speaking Award. She was Spanish 2 Student of the Year. She was going to go to the competition her sophomore year, but it got shut down because of COVID. And so she ended up taking Spanish all 4 years. And I never thought that sometimes you don't realize it's such a cliche, but you don't realize the impact you have until you hear it. And I was just doing what I do, making my class a place that they can enjoy it, that they can enjoy learning. And so to hear her say, I'm in Spanish 4 right now because of you, really meant a lot. And even at the end of the year of her 9th grade year, when I had her as a freshman, she was saying that she started watching stuff on Netflix in Spanish, and she would watch Jane the Virgin, I think, was really popular back then, and she would watch it in Spanish and understand it. So that's been one of my successes, when my students use it outside of class, when they download songs and put on their playlist that they hear in my class. You know, they're like, hey, Miss Thornton, I heard this Ozuna song at a baseball game. Can we play this for Musica Mi class? And I'll say, of course. And then probably a challenge, and it is a challenge that I'm going to be honest, my school is facing head on, is making sure that there is access for all of our students to take upper levels of language, because what, we do not want in my school, one of the things that my principal is adamant about is, if my school population is 55% African American, our AP classes should reflect that. And in some schools, I hate saying the phrase but that's kind of how it feels. It feels like you have your one segment of your student population and you have your overall set of demographics, but in the other classes, your honors classes, your gifted classes, your AP classes, it doesn't look like that. And that is something that it is something I hope that we see in this community of language educators, see it when we do it, when we kind of start to and call it out when we see it, because it's just something that we need to work on. So that's been probably, and then the traditional challenges just in level 2, because sometimes one is so many words and you can make one kind of engaging. The second level is so grammar intense that they tap out. So that's kind of been something that's been the hard part, is getting I just tell them, just get past this. Once you just get past this, just get past this. 3 is not going to be so bad. Or they get to 3 and then it's all subjunctive. And they're like, Miss Thornton, you said it wasn't going to be as hard in 2. And now we're doing this. And I said, just give it a while. Just give it a while. So that has been, my strength, my joys is just when they enjoy my class and love it and use the language outside of the class. And then the challenges are probably what most of us face, just making sure our students realize that it's not just them that look like us.
I'll say the same thing. For me, my context of teaching is I'm at a 4-year institution, the 3rd largest institution in the state of Louisiana. And I also adjunct at Morris Brown College, HBCU. We just regained our accreditation. So I'm in these 2 different fields, these 2 different spaces. And so in my Southeastern space, for many of my students, I'm the first Black man they've ever had in their life. I am the first ever, sometimes just general person of color that they've ever had as an educator in their life. And so my challenge there is, number one, I walk in the room and I'm young. I walk in the room and they're like, well, who's the professor? Who are you? What are you doing here? You don't teach Spanish. What? Like that doesn't register. I have to look like Ricky Martin or someone. I cannot be Jerry Parker, right? And then on top of that, what are you doing in a college classroom? You're not, we again, there's only 2 or 3 on the whole campus. And that's not just my institution, that's a problem around the country and in K-12 education as well, right? And so then within that, my next challenge is the fact that I'm an overachiever. So I'm perceived as a threat by colleagues. That's research has suggested that for years. So within that space, I have to learn to navigate. So my sense of belonging is always a challenge. But my success is my ability to freely do what I want to do with my curriculum. I have an amazing department head and I have an amazing support system at Morris Brown, provost, president, assistant provost, all of them at Morris Brown support me. My department head, my dean, my provost at Southeastern both support me. And I'm a curriculum theorist. That's what my research focuses a lot on, how multicultural education intersects with foreign language education. So I'm able to create elaborate curriculum designs, which will be coming out in publication soon. I'm able to do these fancy things with my teaching and include videos and no one questions it, right? I'm also able to include and say names like Lydia Cabrera, Nicolas Guillen, Maryse Condé, Leopold Sedor Sango. I can say these names in my class and teach these people as my cultural lessons. I do not follow the textbook. I do not go off of these just package deals that textbook publishers offer us. I'm able to mix and mingle and match and do what I want. I also serve as undergraduate program coordinator and director of the Foreign Language Resource Center at Southeastern. So as the program coordinator, I do recruitment. I'm able to target specific populations. And in foreign languages, I go for everybody. I believe everybody can learn a world language. I don't limit that to just the Black students. However, I, as a physical representation of what these Black men and women could be, I recruit them specifically and say, you can do what I'm doing, right? And I don't stop at just general tables out in the middle of the campus. I call up the National Panhellenic Council. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma myself, so I have an in, I have a connection. I can call up the Black Student Union. I can call up the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and I can go to their meetings and I can recruit these students and I can say, you can major, you can minor, you can do these things. So in that higher education space, I do have a lot more liberty, but like I said, my drawback is my sense of belonging, my colleagues, my collegiality with everyone. Sometimes it is perceived as a threat. Sometimes I am looked at as the unicorn, as the why are you doing so much person? You know, why are you teaching about, again, Nicolas Guillen when in chapter 4 on page whatever, we're talking about Rigoberto Menchú. You know, it sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse, but either way it goes, it's always my struggle, and I know others face this as well.
Yes, everything to what you all just said. I will say for me, for like my teaching context, I've been teaching for 16 years. I actually started out in high school. I started out in high school and then I went to elementary. Don't do that. It just wasn't a good idea. Y'all, it was a rough transition. However, I learned a lot. And then from elementary, I've been hanging out in middle school. So I'm in the trailer that Ebony was talking about. So I'm teaching middle school right now, 5th and 6th Spanish. And, you know, I will say, and alluding to what Jerry just said, I am in a place, I teach at the Latin School of Chicago, so I am in a place where I have a lot of autonomy with my curriculum. I'm in a place where I can share resources about, you know, the African diaspora that either I've created or either that I've co-created with AC Quintero. And so, which is really great. And as Jerry was saying, my department chair, you know, she's great. She supports me in everything that I do. And we have the ability to make a lot of changes and things like that. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think for just as far as like in my situation, with the middle school division, there are, I want to say 40% of the students are students of color within the middle school division. But my concern is, how can we continue to expose our students to the aspects of the African diaspora in high school? Like, besides the, well, this is what happened, you know, your ancestors were sold into slavery and that's it. And a Frederick Douglass, and then that's it. You know, like, I really want to see that. I really want to see more content there, because when I think about college, like, college was like the very first time that I like even learned about just the diaspora and just like our presence within, you know, the different communities. So that's something, that's a challenge. I'm going to try to take it on. We'll see. But I would say that that would definitely be a challenge, like, for me right now.
Yeah, y'all are like really bringing out some important themes. Thinking about the beauty. One thing that you all boasted about is like pride in your students, pride for how they're able to excel and thrive, because not just because of you, right? But you're a part of it. But from coming out of a setting in which you're determined to show them that of what they're capable of. I'm just so excited to think about how you shared that, you know, you're making it fun. You recognize the pivotal role that you play, and they get you in that trailer year. Like, it is on you. You feel that responsibility to make sure that they want to continue, because as you all stated, and as Dr. Uju Anya has brilliantly laid out in the literature, access to advanced study of languages is an equity issue. That level of anti-Blackness that causes for Black students, oftentimes, even if they all start out, they oftentimes disappear into the advanced language study. So I'm so grateful that you brought that up in the ways that you see it, through whitewashed curriculum, through, you know, feeling a lack of belonging to be able to spread the goodness that you're doing amongst your peers and colleagues sometimes. But you even highlighted, when you do get that support, how pivotal it is. Either it's because of that supervisor, or because of the resources at the school, or because of the other school and their provost, right? But when you get that support, how it's a lifeline to you. And I think that's something really important folks can take away. Be that person, that's the plug, because as long as we get the support we need, we're gonna rock out. So I appreciate y'all saying that. I could talk to y'all forever. We're gonna move to question 3, just because I want to make sure we get it in. So thinking about all that you shared thus far, I do want to roll into thinking about recommendations for the field. So from your expertise, your lived experiences, what would you recommend for the future of world languages? So that could be societally, organizationally, right? We're here with ACTFL, or it could be thinking more of your local or district or school level regarding, you've already talked about curricula, pedagogy, and assessment, but what would you recommend as our path forward?
Listen to us. I mean, it's that sounds really simple, but we're out there. We exist. We're here. It's not just the 4 of us that are on this panel. There's so many more people that I could name. There's AC Quintero. There's the teachers in my school system that are watching this right now, and there are so many. There's John Bracey, who teaches Latin. He couldn't make it tonight. RJ Randolph. Regina, who is in this session right now. We are here. You know, they're in your buildings. They're in your system. They're in your classroom. Ask them what they want. Listen to them, and then actually implement what it is that their suggestions are. That's something I'm very fortunate about, that I get to do that a lot in my school system, my content team, and my department. Is when I say, hey guys, why don't we incorporate some of this? Why don't we incorporate some of that? Or even something as simple as when you're introducing vocabulary and you use a phrase like estar de moda, feature well-dressed Black women instead of just some cute blonde girls at the mall. that is something you can do when you are wanting to incorporate it. And then giving your students a chance to always see themselves. When we see it, we can when you visualize it, you can make it happen. So I would say the first thing is listen to us. 2, do not take critiques of things personally or as personal attacks. So if we are addressing this field and we are saying this is something we don't see, it isn't that if I care enough to critique it, that means I want to improve it. And it's not the opposite. I always say all the time, the opposite of love isn't hatred, it's indifference. If I care enough to check, to call in, to actually bring this to your attention, it's because I know, 1, you have the capacity to change. 2, I want you to. If this was not, we wouldn't be having this panel if we didn't think that this was something that the world language community wanted, needed, and strived to have. If if Tasha just thought, well, we're just going to keep it pushing, if we're going to just have to keep it pushing in our classrooms because the field as a whole doesn't care, but we can do what we do in our classes and that'll be enough. No. And it shouldn't be enough. So, if textbook creators only just have the same old picture, say, I don't know if I want to use this in if you're doing, I don't know if they even do textbook reviews anymore in 2022, but if they do, just say, my students aren't represented in this book. The community that I teach, especially if there is a large Cuban or Dominican population and all they're learning, and don't get me wrong, I love Castilian Spanish, but why are they learning vosotros? Why are they learning vosotros? They're not going to use vosotros.
Ebony, you're going to have a mutiny. Don't bring up vosotros.
I'm not. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I teach it. I'm just, but my point is, even using English sometimes, just a small little example, and then I'm going to give it to everybody else. Regional dialogues are important. So even if you say, okay, hey guys, you know how here in the South, we say soda. If you have a student from up north or from Michigan, they're going to say pop. Just know they're talking about a soft drink. It's the same kind of thing. Like, not everybody says estacionar el auto to say park the car. They say parquear el carro. So that would be my big recommendation, is just listen, give us the floor, and yeah, that's it.
Which I'll follow up on that one. I have 2 things. One, all language teachers need to understand that we are no longer teaching in 1980. Okay. We are in 2022. Your classrooms are filled with diverse groups of learners. You are teaching future doctors, future lawyers, future TikTok, what do you call them? TikTok influencers, Instagram models. You are teaching future business owners via Instagram. You're going to teach coders. You're going to teach every single thing under the sun. Foreign languages is not reserved for the elite that are going to college anymore. Every student in your class deserves the right to be fluent in a foreign language. They deserve that right to have it taught to them via their cultural framework. Not just, well, we're going to continue doing the charts and the boxes and turn the page. That's old. That needs to go away. COVID removed a lot of it. COVID made a lot of us start integrating technology into our teaching. But in this post-COVID world, we have to get with the times. Our field is going down because we refuse to rise up. On top of that, pro-Blackness does not equal anti-everybody else. Just because I support this one group of students does not mean I don't support everybody else. I'll give a quick example. One of my favorite coworkers, Dr. Elizabeth Hornsby, had to give my shout out to her. She has 7 children, and she always gives the example of when one of her 7 children has something going on, that does not mean the other 6 she just doesn't care for. That means at that moment in time, she has to give more to that one child so that all 7 plus mom and dad can be okay. And that is what this conversation is saying as well. That no, you can't just give everything to the Black teachers. However, there's a special thing going on in this group that is not speaking back to the field because the field has refused to accept us in. So open the door. Social capital is a real thing. Unfortunately, because of historical events, we don't have it. Give it to us or we're going to take it. But sometimes when we take it, we get backlash that we didn't ask for, which silences us.
Okay. Oh, were you? Okay. I'll go ahead and go. I don't know how to follow that one. Jerry. I mean, I'm like,
I don't either.
I know. I'm like, whoo. So I just listening to Ebony and Jerry, like I was just jotting down some notes and just thinking about just, my experience as well. I will say one thing, like, please don't box us in. We are a diaspora, meaning that there are so many types of different, whatever you want to call it, Black people. We are individuals. Do not box us in terms of just, well, we're just going to reserve this for you because this is what you do. And just not a very good idea. And I will say the other thing too that I have written down here is, include us in professional development and include us in decisions. I think that's probably like my big piece. A few years ago, I wrote a blog post about the lack of inclusivity that I saw going on in conferences when it comes to presenters. And like, even like keynotes, like so granted, there has been a little bit of change, but include us. There are so many of us that bring so many different things to the table, so many different gifts, so many different experiences, and we need to be included. And we need to have more representation within professional development when it comes to leadership and in those decisions.
I am just going to say, I really don't know how to follow up. You guys have blessed me just so much right now. And it's just amazing. And piggyback on that. And I want to say, include us, but not in just the way to, I'm going to check a box. Like we're noticing so much being done nowadays in DEI because we have to do it. So let's do it. But do it because we are human. We are different. We come from everywhere. And like she said, you wouldn't believe the diaspora, the African diaspora, it's so diverse. Someone I was reading the comment was asking if I'm from DRC. I'm actually from Congo, Brazzaville, the other Congo. My husband is from DRC. He's not going to be happy because I'm partly from there too. And it's like we are so from everywhere. And if you just choose to ignore or to just apart, it's not about sharing the space. It's the space that's there for all of us. And I don't think we should have the burden to beg for a space. We are here. We are human. So we shouldn't have to ask for permission. We shouldn't have to apologize for taking space because we're not taking it. It's ours, right? Just for the fact that we are human beings. And also the fact that when we are in the space, yes, acknowledge it. And if you are not, as a teacher, for example, my recommendation would be, if you as a teacher, you're not diverse, like making sure that everybody is included in your curriculum in an honest manner, not in the way that you want to actually taking the humanity out of them, then you are cutting your students. You're not benefiting for doing anything for them. You are cutting them out of communicating with such a large population that can you have no idea what you could be bringing to them. And so I think, like Jerry said, it's about time that all of the diaspora is included in everywhere. There's so many Latin American. I live in Miami, so you imagine all the people that speak Spanish coming from Latin America, from the Caribbean, from Cuba, from everywhere. And then look at the Francophone countries. So it's unbelievable to me in this day and age that you will actually present the country ignoring that those people exist. It's just like if you were teaching English and you don't include African American literature, if you don't include Nigerian literature, it's a diaspora as well. I don't think that can be done anymore. So
You just set me off, Veronique. No, you didn't say when you teach in English and you don't feature African Americans, because that is still the norm. So
how can that be?
Whew, y'all are just out of this world with the clarity and with the honesty and being so targeted in the ways that you are offering these gifts of critique. Ebony, the way that you phrased it, like, this is a gift. Once we stop critiquing you, that's when you should start to become concerned, right? Because that means we've thrown our hands up and we've determined that there is no space for us here. And then we take our brilliance elsewhere, we hide it. And all that does is hurt children, right? And we're not interested in that. So we bring our gifts and they should be received freely. The way you said, Veronique, we shouldn't have to beg to do what we do, right? We should take up the space that is rightfully ours. So just in thinking about the brilliance you just shared, what we lay before, not just ACTFL, but our entire community that we know is aching for these improvements and for these paths forward. Listen to us, receive the critique, respect linguistic variation. And that's across all languages. That's in English as well. Respect linguistic variations, keep up with the times, right? So there's so much available to us that we've learned through this COVID era that is persisting as a COVID era. We need to use it. We've had the benefit of learning now. Let's put it to use. Rise to the occasion. Pro-Blackness is not anti-anyone else. Respect our diversity within the diaspora. We show up so many different ways. We only have 4 of us here, 5 in addition if you add me, and we represent such a breadth of things that are not overlapping within the Black diaspora. So include us in those decisions and respect what we're bringing to the table. Just with that alone, we would be in wonderful position moving forward to ensure that our field thrives, right? Moving forward. So thank you all for your time. I know for a fact that we need part 2, part 8, part 69. I know for a fact that we need to continue with this conversation, but I do hope folks will go ahead, hashtag this is how we do it, tag ACTFL. You can go ahead and look at the handles of these incredible panelists if you have questions to continue the conversation. It is the hour, so I want to thank you for spending this time with us. And I hope that you come to recognize the brilliance right here in our backyard as we continue to show you how we do it as Black world language teachers. So thank you all. I don't know if Michael's going to pop back in, but I appreciate y'all for real.
Thank you so much. Et merci beaucoup. Someone needs to speak the language that we speak on the chat.
Eso. Tenemos que hacerlo en español también.
Sí.
Gracias.
Sí, muchísimas gracias.
Ok, chao a todo el mundo.